foundation for the research, but it's not enough for the university. Like that one. Then we are looking for the Stanford and MIT is the good example for our
that would be nice.
future
Exactly.
example.
Yes, 8% is very low, and for supporting the instruction. So the issue is that there are plenty of people who are willing to pay the maximum amount that's allowed in the tuition. So you're not really worried that much that the people pay is too much. More just that with what they pay and the amount you get from the government, it's not enough to offer a high level education to the students. And then the research is kind of a second thing that you want on there. And you think that that the government will increase the 8%, but will they reduce the cap? I mean, allow the cap to come up a bit too, so that you can.
Well, the reason I think why there is a limitation on the student tuition fees because of the average income of Mongolians is not very high. But said that we have inflow of capital in mining sector, which creates capital, but also creates jobs. But then again, for those people to be able to work on those international projects, they have to have very good qualifications, and most of the students applying for it, they don't qualify.
Oh, I was just going to. Do you limit what students can study so that you determine how many engineers and how many social scientists, or do the students just do it by choice?
Yes.
Resolution of Ministry of Education every year.
And they've just chosen a lot of business degrees, and so they have not had very many engineering.
No, actually, the picture changed in recent years. That there is a lot of students they enrolling into the in the engineering.
Yeah.
And the best students probably applying for it too. But I mean, that creates also kind of vacuum for the other, like education, for example, or agriculture, those fields which are also important. So if you get top 20% applying for engineering, then you can see the distributions going on for the rest of the students. I mean, of course, the better we get, the best students we get, the better for engineering and natural science and so on. But it doesn't mean that we have the necessary resources to educate the best.
Yeah.
You have a very strong mining economy, but whether this feeds back into the education is a different question.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I wanted to just say, like if you look at China and Russia, that I think first of all, like the per student allocation that they get is at least 33% of the budget, even in the lower tier universities. So when you go to the higher tier universities, you're talking about more than 50% of the money comes from the government, and that's the per student allocation. Then they have special projects, and they focus just on a small number of universities in the beginning. China has maybe 2,000 universities. They focus on the top 100, and in Russia, they focus on the top 28 universities. And they gave competitive grants that they said that, we want you to become research universities, we want you to become very good universities. And so here's some conditions. We have this money available and you have to qualify. And they have different stages that, for example, for 5 years, we're going to choose these few universities. Now to get it in the next 5 years, you have to meet these requirements. And so that's created a good competition, for example, in Russia. In China also there's some competition to get that money. But basically, all of the experience in the world says that to build these research universities that are, good, solid research universities, you have to have money. And it has to come from the government because you need some kind of external push to do that. And I think the same thing with, if you're really wanting to strengthen engineering or these certain sectors, one is to really put more money there and to start small with a few universities. And then also to increase the quotas and to subsidize students to choose things that aren't so favorable. For example, agriculture and education, also in China they have trouble getting students, but then they give them scholarships to go to these majors, so they end up getting more students. But then they have some requirements sometimes. It says if you graduate from this major, you should go and work in this field, maybe back in your hometown or maybe in a certain area for 3 to 5 years. And so it they have all kinds of incentives built into improving that.
So there was a time when the colleges were considered to be a business. When they just liberalized higher education, we had about 200, I think, higher education institutions in that country. For the population of that size, it's very bad. So the last government started the measures to reduce the numbers, force them to become one large university and so on. So, but that also creates a burden to the universities themselves. So you can imagine there was a university which was kind of self-sustainable, but then you create a mechanism which forces them to unite with a different larger university, and then this larger university is suffering from own budget anyways. Then you have also those small universities that were forced to unite. So it is I think we are learning by trying that system. Allocating money from government is, of course, it's a necessary step. But then how the management of this funding, that you get the best outcome of it is a totally different question. I think you need to have a solid competitive system and selective criteria and so on, so that at the end you will. And this will be a very political decision as well, because the Ministry of Education will at the end decide how much money goes where. And in each election it will be decided on the outcome whether they did a good job or not. So I can imagine it will create also a lot of discussion.
What about the kind of competitiveness of selection and of funding and things like that? How open is it versus how much is it based on test scores or some other kinds of things in terms of both what universities people go to and what fields they're in? There's the range of where
You're talking about the undergrad enrollment.
For the undergraduate enrollment.
Сургууль хоорондоо хэр зэрэг өрсөлдөөнтэй сонгож авахдаа яаж
Actually, I told you in our 4 universities, in example, our 4 universities, it's one is agriculture, other one is for engineering, other one is for education sector, and the sector is different. But still, we have also the competition to beat the universities. But actually, it's difficult how we select the excellent school, the graduate star from the secondary school. It's the first difficulty. And still, we have an example, our university has 24, 30